The one with Phoebe's birthday dinner is a brilliant episode of Friends and is probably for me the episode with the strongest emotional response in terms of feeling the emotions of one of the characters. And I'll talk more about that in a moment. This is the 5th episode of season 9 of Friends. It's directed by David Schwimmer. And of course, as always, there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode and share some thoughts. I'm kind of going to go through things chronologically, but there will be a little jumping around here and there. So I apologise if my thoughts were a little bit scattered. It starts off in Central Park and Phoebe's discussing her birthday dinner and she gets excited because, as she says, we haven't been together, the 6 of us, in such a long time. And Monica says, what are you talking about? We're all together right now. And Rachel replies, Mon, Chandler's not here. Monica's response to that was very funny, but it's also a little bit emotional because obviously the 6 of them will never be together again. And the reunion episode just came at the most perfect time, and I feel like we are so lucky for that experience to have existed. And I imagine they feel the same way. I don't want to put words into anybody's mouths, but I feel like if I were them, I would be so thankful that there was that opportunity, that excuse to bring everybody together again for what was unfortunately the very last time. So it's a bit of an emotional introduction. It never used to be, but obviously now that's the case. And the rest of the episode is leading up to Phoebe's birthday dinner. And everybody's doing their own things. Everybody has their own problems. Chandler's is the most annoying. And I hate it. I absolutely hate it. Chandler's at work and he starts smoking. One of his colleagues tells him that apparently you can smoke in an office in Oklahoma if there are 15 people or fewer than 15. I can't remember, it was inclusive of 15. And I don't know if that's true. I did a tiny bit of Googling and the top result was a Reddit thread of somebody asking the exact same question. They'd watched the episode. So I don't know if that was ever true. But I assume that it's definitely not true now. And Chandler starts smoking. He gives into the temptation and he goes home. And obviously Monica can smell it on him. And she is so angry. And this is the bit where I've never felt the character's emotions so much as I did in that moment. Smoking is my number one deal breaker. If I was in a relationship with somebody, if I'd been married to somebody for decades, obviously who knows what the reality would be. If I had been married to somebody for decades and they take up smoking and they refuse to quit, that's it, game over. For me, it is my number one. I have a lot of issues with it. I don't want to go into too much detail, but certainly there are valid reasons why I really detest it so much. So I really felt everything Monica felt, and it was uncomfortable to watch. It really is an uncomfortable part of the episode, and I side with her completely. Well, no, she tricked Chandler to getting into bed. She's ovulating, so they need to make use of the time while they can. So she pretends that it's not a big deal, it's just a few cigarettes. She gets him into bed. And yeah, that's a little slimy. I don't really agree with that, but it's not the biggest thing in the world, I guess. But yeah, that was a little deceitful. But other than that, I agree with all of her emotions on this one. Rachel doesn't want to go. She doesn't want to leave Emma. But Judy's looking after Emma. It's not like she's leaving Emma on her own. And Ross is trying to encourage her to go out. It'll be good for her. Emma will be perfectly fine, which is obviously the most likely scenario. And Ross is herding her out of the door, and the apartment door, shuts behind them. And they're locked out. And Rachel panics. And Ross comes up with this very elaborate story of an eagle swooping in and the stove's on fire and the eagle's on fire and the eagle's clutching Emma. I have to say that was quite cruel. Because while Rachel's fears are probably never going to be realised, Emma will be perfectly fine in most scenarios, I feel like that was unfair. Because at the same time, I think leaving your child alone for the first time will be scary. And Ross wasn't really appreciative of what Rachel was feeling, basically invalidating her feelings and then giving her this ridiculous scenario that in her panicked state could come true in her mind. So Ross wasn't the greatest in this episode, but we do get some comedy out of him. Meanwhile, Phoebe and Joey are at the restaurant waiting for everybody else to arrive, and eventually they do. Ross and Rachel arrive and Judy is there with Emma, which it's interesting that Rachel would rather have, not that I think it's a problem, but it's more interesting that Rachel would rather have Emma at a bar around people drinking, including Judy drinking, than have Judy look after her in her apartment. I thought that was quite interesting. And then Monica and Chandler arrive, and Rachel's about to tell them Ross's Willie story, which Judy mentioned earlier. And Ross's face when he realizes they already know it, was just, his face just dropped, and it was so funny. I really enjoyed that moment a lot. And then Rachel's going to give a speech, a toast for Phoebe, and Emma dropped her sock, and Phoebe has had enough. And she stands up, and Lisa Kudrow gives 3 seconds of the best performance ever. It's maybe 4 or 5 seconds at the very most. She screams for Judy to pick up the sock. And it's just absolutely delightful. It's maybe one of my favourite Phoebe moments in isolation. Obviously, there are better Phoebe stories that are stronger overarching, but that moment in general, I thought was just absolutely brilliant. And then her phone rings, and I just realised she had her phone on her and nobody thought to call. That's very selfish, actually. If you know you're running late, maybe they didn't know she'd have her phone with her, but either way, Mike calls and she leaves to go with Mike. And then Ross and Rachel leave, and Monica and Chandler leave, and it's just Joey and all the food. And then he gets the birthday cake and he's enjoying it, and it's, well, as he says, it's the best birthday ever, and it was an absolute joy for Joey at the end there. So it's a really solid episode. It's not the easiest watch because of Chandler smoking. I detest it. I absolutely hate it. I'm fully with Monica there, and I know not everybody will be on Monica's side. People, particularly people who smoke, I imagine will be thinking that Monica's overreacting. But when you have my perspective, as many people do, it's not really an overreaction. So Monica made me feel things I didn't want to feel, but I'm fully on her side for the most part. Ross's Willie story, thoroughly enjoyed it. Phoebe's outburst, fully justified. It's a great episode. Needless to say, the one with Phoebe's birthday dinner is pretty fabulous, and it's an episode that I'm sure I will always absolutely love.